Honourable Member, I am privileged to speak on the Port City Commission Amendment Bill. I first like to congratulate His Excellency for appointing Harsha Amarsekara President's Council as the Chairman of the Port City. He is a dynamic leader in the legal field and also in the corporate world, and therefore I believe his ability will contribute a lot to developing activities in the Port City. Also, as a former Deputy Minister of Board of Investment, I would like the Deputy Minister that a DG of the BOI has not been appointed for 4 years, and I believe that the BOI is a very important institution, that you will consider and see that an appointment of a Director General of the BOI is made expeditiously. Honourable Deputy Minister, since the Minister is not in the House, I would like to make some constructive criticisms in regard to this bill. I would like to say with responsibility, the amendments create systematic risk which could destabilize the domestic economy. Honourable Member, the amendments to Section 421 now state that the Port City banking rules, notwithstanding the provisions of the Banking Act, will not apply. Therefore, prior to this amendment, the Banking Act was applicable. With the amendment, the Banking Act is not applicable with regard to the Port City Act, with regard to offshore banking. Honourable Deputy Minister, I would like to ask you a very vital question. Prior to the amendment, licenses of offshore banking was issued in terms of the Banking Act. However, with this amendment, licenses are issued by the Port City Commission. Therefore, I humbly ask the Honourable Deputy Minister to reconsider whether the Port City Commission has the expertise to issue a license. Because there was some ambiguity. In fact, Honourable Ravi Karunatha asked me, is it true that licenses are issued now in terms of the Port City Act? Prior to the amendment, yes, but if this amendment goes through, the Port City Commission will be able to issue a banking license, thereby creating a shadow banking system. And also, offshore banks operating in the Port City can borrow funds from domestic banks in dollars. That is a very dangerous phenomena, because that can have a drain on our foreign exchange reserves and also on our domestic banking system. The amendments are introduced under section that offshore banking, now prior to the amendment, the Banking Act operated, except for Section 4. Now with the amendment, the central bank has to make regulations in terms of the international banking standards. In terms of the Banking Act, international banking standards as far as practicable. Therefore, if you take Basel for example, our banks were safeguarded because though Basel states that it's adequate, the capital adequacy ratio in terms of Basel is 8%. However, Central Bank brought a directive, it should be 10%, thereby protected our domestic banking system. So with the present amendment, whatever directives issued will be in terms of the international banking standards. International banking standards is very fluid. There is no proper definition, so there is great ambiguity. Therefore, I propose amendment to be made saying that international as far as practicable, thereby giving our governing body, now it's the central bank, governing board, to decide in the interest of our banking system to take decisions with regard to minimum capital adequacy. If you look at the gift city in India, it has been able to attract their professionals to work in India. However, this amendment, Sri Lankan residents would have to pay income tax after this amendment. Therefore, I humbly request that the government considers, we are talking about brain drain. After COVID, Sri Lanka has left. After Aragalaya, Sri Lanka has left. Our youth are leaving the country, and also taxes are 36%, the higher tax slab. So therefore, if you want to retain Sri Lankans working here, I humbly request that you reconsider the amendment where residents of Sri Lanka who work in the port city have to pay taxes. And also, Honorable Member, I would like to bring some other matters to your notice. Now, we talk about foreign investments coming in. Sri Lankans are investing in Sri Lanka, especially you take the real estate sector, you need about 21 approvals. Other than the UD and a few other authorities, now you take the wildlife, you take the forest, you take the coast conservation, they are hesitant to grant approval, or that process takes a hell of a long time, thereby creating a major problem. Therefore, I say that there should be a one-stop shop where our Sri Lankans, we are talking about FDIs coming in, we should first prevent Sri Lankans are getting frustrated and going and investing in Dubai. They are leaving, they are going to all parts of the world. So first, please create a platform where our Sri Lankans can invest in Sri Lanka and have substantial returns. Honorable Member, if a real estate company sells a property, 35% goes for taxes. So therefore Sri Lanka, at this point of time, this government has survived revenue collected from income tax, from excise and customs. So thereby please make the process a fair and equitable process where Sri Lankans can invest in Sri Lanka, because Sri Lankans are getting frustrated. Also, if you take the Port City Commission Act, there is no timeline when an approval is sought. There is no timeline when it is either accepted or rejected. So therefore, if you want to have a proper process, please bring in either through regulations or through a statute that when a party makes an application to the Port City Commission, that his application will be dealt in within a specific period, either accept it or reject it. Don't keep it in abeyance, because in terms of the Act, where there is no provision where one has to give approval or reject within a specific period. In addition, if there is to be investment in Sri Lanka, it has to be investment friendly. Regulatory process has to be friendly. Our banking process has to be friendly, because otherwise there is going to be great frustration which would take place. Therefore, if today the BOI has become a white elephant, now the Strategic Development Act, I believe that you all have brought in some amendments. And also, please don't be dictated by the IMF. Sri Lanka has suffered a massive disaster. We need to give tax concessions. If you take in the region, Sri Lanka is not competitive. Our energy costs are high. Our labor costs are high. Why should a foreigner come and invest in Sri Lanka? Now we are talking about offshore banking. Our tax regime is very high. I want to ask the Honorable Deputy Minister, who are you trying to bring to Sri Lanka? Who will come and set up an offshore bank in Sri Lanka now? And also, for a commercial bank to operate in Sri Lanka, you need $60 million. However, for an offshore bank, it's only $15 million. And also, only at present, you all have brought in amendments, only a foreign entity carrying on banking business overseas can set up offshore banking here. So therefore, there is no level playing field with regard to Sri Lankan banks, because a Sri Lankan bank is issued an offshore license in terms of the Banking Act, whereas offshore company who is a foreign entity, an offshore bank with a foreign entity, would get a license under the Port City Commission Act. Therefore, my fundamental issue is there are various issues, but I would say that you cannot allow the Port City Commission to issue a banking license. We have a very strong banking act. We have a regulatory process. We have experts working. Central Bank has about 1,000 employees, and now you all are trying to give the power to issue a banking license to the Port City Commission, which would be very detrimental to the banking system. Because I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to point a finger at anybody. I would like to ask the Deputy Minister, why are you bringing an amendment whereby earlier the for offshore license is issued, it was issued in terms of the Banking Act. Why are you taking it away and giving the Port City Commission to issue a banking license and only giving the central bank a supervisory role only in certain matters? Thank you.
ස්තුති කර මන්ත්‍රීතුමනි, මිළඟට නියෝජ්‍ය අමාත්‍ය ආචාර්ය